Good morning, everyone. Well, good night, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. I know there are many options to choose, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you especially to the Academy of Diversity and Innovation and to Sierra Poland for organizing this conference and for accepting my proposal. My name is Andrea Martínez Celis, as you may already know. I work as a university professor at Rey Juan Carlos University in Madrid, in Spain, and as an intercultural competence trainer for Small World World. And am I also part of the Elevate project, which is also hosting this event. Today, I'm going to present my investigation about the role of intercultural competence in the internationalization of higher education. And my focus is specifically on the administrative and support staff because they are an understudied population. And if you think about it, they are very often the first people with whom international visitors establish contact. So they play a key role in this phenomenon. As I just have 20 minutes to talk, I want to explain to you the most innovative part of my investigation, which is a kind of tool or methodology to assess somehow intercultural competence, taking the applied linguistics perspective, which is actually my background. So for a better understanding, let's quickly review the theoretical frameworks I'm articulating my research. Regarding internationalization, I took Lingston's approach, who defines it as the attempts of higher education institutions to integrate intentionally, which is key, an international and an intercultural dimension into the teaching, research, and service function of the institutions. Which means that internationalization does not happen because of having a high number of international students or because of teaching courses in English, but the intercultural dimension is fundamental in the process, and all the university community is essential in this process. Also the administrative and support staff, of course. And as a basis, I use the Erdős process model of intercultural competence, which includes all these dimensions that I'm not going to go into details because you already know about it, but I wanted to highlight that this framework was chosen because it is specifically focused on international universities, and also because Erdős considers intercultural competence as a lifelong process. In other words, people do not reach a level at which one is fully interculturally competent, where you get a certificate or something like that, but intercultural competence is developed throughout life. This also implies that we can move forward and backward in this process. That is, on an external level, with all the global conflicts that unfortunately exist today, it's difficult to put ourselves in the shoes of people from certain countries, for example. On a more personal level, I may have a conflict with someone from another culture, for example, an argument over a car crash. And it's very easy for a bunch of stereotypes about that person's culture to come to my mind. Therefore, intercultural competence isn't something stable. It's a process we engage in throughout our lives. Since, and furthermore, we never stop learning and unlearning, and we never stop constructing and deconstructing ourselves. So according to the Erdős model and to the definitions it provides, intercultural competence is the ability to develop targeted knowledge, skills, and attitudes that lead to visible behavior and communication that are both effective and appropriate in intercultural situations, interactions. If you think about it, knowledge and skills can be taught, can be learned, practiced. Nevertheless, attitudes seem to present a great challenge. And that's why the main hypothesis of my research is that the origin of attitudes and thus of intercultural competence is found in human values, hence its complexity. Values are within each individual, while attitudes are the visible evidence of those values. People can perceive others' attitudes, but not necessarily their values. Therefore, values as the origin of attitudes play a crucial role in people's intercultural competence. And for this reason, the other main theoretical framework delved into human values. particularly into the theory of basic human values proposed by SVATS, who suggested 10 human values divided into 4 different dimensions, which are openness to change, composed of self-direction and stimulation, and also hedonism. Then we have self-enhancement, where we find also hedonism together with achievement and power. Then conservation, where security, conformity, and tradition values are found. And finally, we have self-transcendence, where universalism values and benevolence values are placed. I just want to mention that because I'm not going to explain value by value, but I really recommend you to read SVAT's articles. I just wanted to mention that the main difference between benevolence values and universalism values are that those guided by benevolence values care more, let's say, about those from the in-group, okay, what we call the in-group. And those who follow universalism values concern also for the out-group. So this is very important in this investigation because in an international office, imagine in an Erasmus office, for example, if a student comes because of some, he or she has suffered from some racist comments or behavior from someone else, people guided by universalism values would try to protect also this internationalized student, and not just those people from the in-group from the university because of being from the in-group. Okay, that could be the difference between benevolence and universalism values. I hope it is clearer now. So let's move on to the methodology, followed by to get my investigation. A semi-structured interview was designed, divided into different sections. First, event questions in which participants are asked to reflect on different notions, such as, for example, the concept of culture. Like, do you understand the culture? Can you define culture? Then perspective questions, in which participants are invited to share self-experienced critical incidents they have lived through with people from other cultures. And lastly, some situations in which intercultural dissonances are likely to occur are posed to the participants to observe their reactions. Finally, participants could also provide some feedback, their opinions, some proposals to improve the internationalization process, etc. Then the answers from the interview are analyzed linguistically to explore how intercultural competence is constructed discursively. In order to do so, the first step is to establish a direct contact between the 10 human values proposed by SVATS and the requisite attitudes considered by Davidoff as essential for the development of intercultural competence. So I followed what is called the agile coding process. The initial categories were the 10 human values divided into the 4 dimensions I previously mentioned. Then I established a relationship between categories, creating 5 groups of values which were closely related, and according to the definitions provided, a connection was established between these groups of values and the attitudes proposed by Davidoff, which were finally the main categories, as you can see in the figure. That is, universalism and benevolence values resolved into respect attitudes, sorry, stimulation values due to curiosity and discovery attitudes, and self-direction values cause openness attitudes. Further, new categories arose in the coding process, which were security, conformity, and tradition values, hypothesized to result into stability attitudes, and finally, achievement, power, and hedonism values, which are demonstrated by success attitudes. Okay, I hope it is clear, because it was many years working on this and summarized in a minute. So I hope it is clear enough. So let's move on to results. I will show you the ones I obtained from the administrative and support staff of 2 European universities as an example so you can see how this proposal works, how my suggested methodology works. So first of all, I wanted to show you some of the lexical patterns revealing values and the resulting attitudes within this sample. First of all, universalism values were revealed when participants used the word people on purpose to emphasize that international visitors were indeed people, not only numbers of the university. They were people with their own problems beyond mobility issues, and also in order not to differentiate them from national students. So they were all considered part of the university community without differentiation. Further, they mentioned understanding to explain the necessary skills to perform their work in these internationalization units, and welcome to explain how they wanted international students to feel when they arrived in a new country. Benevolence values were also revealed when participants mentioned specifically their own colleagues to highlight the essential work of those from the in-group that we previously mentioned. What else? Stimulation values were demonstrated when participants expressed noticeably their interest in new people and new knowledge, and when they stated that interacting with people from other cultures made their routines much more dynamic, which made them feel alive, which I think it's beautiful. And then self-direction values were revealed when participants acknowledged that interacting with people from other cultures was extremely interesting. How much they learned when intercultural dissonances or misunderstandings had happened, taking the positive aspects, let's say, of the misunderstandings they have lived through. So, in general terms, participants perceived the internationalization of higher education as an opportunity to interact with people from diverse cultures and learn from them. Therefore, they demonstrated very positive attitudes towards it. Specifically, as the figures illustrate, the interviews with participants showed mostly respect attitudes, followed by curiosity and discovery attitudes, and by openness. The similarity among findings is remarkable, given the contextual differences among participants and institutions. However, it must be mentioned that success attitudes appeared only among participants from university number 1, as you can see, and stability attitudes were revealed only by participants from university number 2. But again, as you can see, in a very low proportion compared to the rest of attitudes. Additionally, the analysis of the interviews also demonstrated participants' knowledge, comprehension, and skills. Particularly, participants from both institutions showed deep cultural knowledge. For instance, when one of the participants defined culture as people living in their own environments with different kinds of views of life and ways of communicating, followed by sociolinguistic awareness, which was remarkable, especially when they mentioned the importance of pragmatic skills and nonverbal language in their job positions. And finally, self-cultural awareness when using expressions such as, for example, in my own cultural context. Regarding intercultural adaptability, the self-experienced critical incidents participants shared were rated at a different level of this rubric, adapted from a rubric by Sánchez Hernández and Maritza Levalo. When intercultural dissonances take place, people at the initial level could fall into stereotypes and blame their interlocutors to excuse themselves from the misunderstanding. People at the intermediate level could recognize the cause of the dissonance and try to overcome them, but just to avoid conflict. And those at the advanced level of intercultural adaptability could completely adjust to the situation through communicative, behavioral, or emotional adaptability. People at the advanced level highly value the opportunity of interacting with people from other cultures. For them, cultural differences are not an impediment, but an opportunity to learn. And that's the main difference with the rest of categories. Moreover, people at this level offer helpful solutions to avoid dissonances from happening. For instance, one of the participants at this advanced level said that whenever they had a conversation or a meeting with someone from another culture or who spoke a different language, they always sent all the information by email in written format to their interlocutors to be sure to make sure everything was clear and to avoid any kind of linguistic or cultural dissonance. As can be seen, most of participants were at the intermediate level, which would imply that intercultural experiences may help to enhance intercultural adaptability. But of course, a specific training in intercultural competence may improve this skill. Eventually, in order to examine the internal and external outcomes of intercultural competence, some situations in which intercultural dissonances were likely to occur were posed to the participants, and the reactions were analyzed. The results show that participants were demonstrated to be highly empathetic towards international students. They valued the efforts internationals made to adapt to the dominant culture, especially if the language of the country was not their first language. Participants also seemed to be able to observe from a thorough perspective and also to be flexible and adaptable when dealing with dissonances. So, in general, the self-reported reactions so they were capable of communicating and behaving effectively in these intercultural situations. Nevertheless, it must be pointed out that intercultural competence, of course, was not measured, since it could have required additional methodological and analytical tools, such as, for example, external observations of real situations. However, these findings could serve to predict how participants would perform in real intercultural situations and to make visible on which dimensions of the intercultural competence process they should focus to improve their development. Finally, the concluding remarks will be summarized. And before that, I wanted to mention the main limitations of my research, because I think it's very important. First, the limited sample size. Because, of course, participants were not representative of the whole population of the administrative and support staff of internationalized universities, and generalizations should not be made. Second, self-selection bias is also a limitation, because participants worked in internationalization units. Presumably, they would have been more interculturally competent, or at least more aware and willing to develop these competencies than were those who worked in other units or who were not willing to participate. Further, avoiding social desirability bias was tried through different kinds of questions. However, participants could have answered what they consider more appropriate or socially acceptable. For this reason, this research offers an interdisciplinary method to evaluate intercultural competence from both an emic but also an etic perspective by analyzing participants' discursive constructions in an attempt to avoid these biases and to obtain the most reliable possible results. Additionally, establishing a connection between the invisible, which are values, and the visible, which are attitudes, could help deepen the investigation of the basis of intercultural competence. Findings also support that empathy is especially important for the administrative and support staff of internationalized universities, because they often handle sensitive issues, such as, for example, international students' mental health problems, vaccinations required for visitors coming from specific countries, economic problems, the death of beloved ones while being abroad, among other problems. Special circumstances such as these occurring in the internationalization context might have gone unnoticed using other kinds of data analytic tools. Further, the complexity of analyzing human values, given their dependence on the context, makes their study challenging, but at the same time essential, because values are as changeable as society. For this reason, human values seem not just the basis of intercultural competence, but also the starting point to develop a solid foundation of internationalized universities. Since, according to the literature, the main aim of comprehensive internationalization is to shape the ethos and values in the entire field of higher education. In conclusion, findings reinforce the importance of human values and intercultural competence of the administrative and support staff, as well as the key role as essential agents in the internationalization process. And on a final note, it should be underlined that more attention should be devoted to them, to this staff, because they are very often the first people with whom international visitors establish contact, that Thus, whether foreign students choose one university over another to carry out their studies or a research stay, for instance, for teachers and professors, may depend on the intercultural competence of this personnel. Therefore, we must be aware of the importance of their work and of how little might be known and valued. I would like to finish my presentation with one quote from one of my participants who stated, "Internationalization is giving me an opportunity to travel the world without leaving my office." I also wanted to mention that my book, which is this one, was published last December. So let me know if you are interested. And I also wanted to take the chance to thank especially to Anna Selno for all her hard work hosting this event. Thank you so much to all of you for your attention. I will be very happy to answer any questions. You have my email there also. You can write to me. Thank you so much.